But he's able to makes it in anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won.
Strap yourselves in. It's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Press 4 to Defuse, your weekly spot for Valorant esports news and discussion. It's our first show of the year. Welcome to 2022, a date that still doesn't feel like a real time. What year is it? How does anything work? I don't know. How is the planet not on fire yet? Is it on fire yet? I don't know, but we're going to talk about Valorant.
It's a matter of time.
We're going to talk about Valorant. How was your New Year's, Sam?
Pretty damn good. I was on a farm for 2 days. I had like limited internet access and I just chilled. It was great. How about you guys?
I want more
like
vibes. I want more context. Why were you on a farm?
That's where my boyfriend lives.
Oh, exciting times for the new year. All right, Paul, how was your New Year?
Less eventful than that. You know,
eventful. I was on a farm.
I was pretty much here. Yeah,
That's more eventful than me.
Sam fist fought a goat. It was
Jeez,
wild. Don't worry about it.
Do you know that I've
Video
almost done that
evidence of
before?
that.
I've almost done that.
Don't pick a fight with a goat.
Well, it
They're
wasn't
mean.
me.
They're mean,
A
man. They'll
goat
win.
tried to eviscerate me, and then my dad kicked it in the face. It was like a whole thing.
They'll
I
do
don't
that.
know.
And then the goat was just like, yes, this is what I want. More.
Pretty
Goats,
much.
goats like to hit
I live
things
for this.
with their heads. It's sort of like their policy in life. Like even really nice goats, if you expose
Guys, even
yourself
for us,
to
this is a
them,
weird tangent.
they will.
to start.
We're down a weird tangent. All right, I'm off of goats. This isn't Overwatch. We don't need to talk about
Having
goats.
flashbacks to Overwatch.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk
Jesus.
about Valorant. Let's get into it. There's a ton of news. There's a ton of news that we have to go over from the holiday period, from the break. Obviously, a ton of new rosters. An agent just dropped, like, right now. So we're going to talk about that a lot, too. So, yeah. All right, let's get into it. Let's dive into Run It Back. This is our segment where we talk about everything that's happened. There's a lot of it. I'm just going to blow through some stuff. This first one, I don't know if this one... Oh, well, we're going with the agent. Yes. All right. We do have the agent
That was
first
the
up.
plan,
Let's talk
yes.
about it. Talk about it.
Off.
Neon.
Hell yeah.
Okay. New agent. First impression. Sam, hit me with it.
Echo from Overwatch and also Sonic. But I mean, the Sonic meme has been a thing for a while now. And then somebody made a joke. It was actually Doombros from FPX. It's like, finally the Apex Legends have a player or a character to play. Because that slide looks dope. That concuss looks cool. And it works kind of like a shock dart or a recon bolt. So you can bounce it off of walls and get into some interesting angles. I have questions about her ultimate because it looks like it could be powerful, but it looks like it makes you crazy vulnerable. But overall, I think she looks like a ton of fun. She's essentially Jet on steroids, so ranked is going to be an adventure. The biggest adventure, as a South African player, with our like 180 to 200 ping slide peeking around corners, this is going to be fucking fantastic. I can't
man.
wait.
Oh, boy. Paul, how you feeling about Neon?
Oh, yeah.
Spectre abusers rejoice, right?
Oh.
Like,
Judge
this is
abusers
literally the
rejoice.
Spectre abuse, the character.
Frenzy meta
Also
back.
Judge,
Frenzy
right?
meta
Like,
back.
I've already been seeing stuff on Twitter, like you put up the double wall, which is one of her abilities. Also, Rip Phoenix.
There's the double wall.
He's
There's the double
absolutely just useless. All of his abilities are useless now. But the double wall, you just throw that up. You run out with a Spectre or a Judge or even like a Frenzy or maybe a Stinger if you're really low on economy. It's gonna be weird when Neon
Oh,
gets
this is where she goes
introduced.
Palpatine.
I just thought it
Well,
was...
it's not like they've done anything to Jet yet, right? Like, not
Yeah.
really.
No.
So, like, what's
Yeah.
stopping you from running Neon, Jet, Raze, and just like
I mean, look.
face rolling a sight?
There's two approaches to an arms race, right? There's disarmament, where you nerf Jet, and then there's let's build a better one, a stronger one, and that way people can compete. So they built a stronger one. Here's her ultimate.
Arms race.
Or sparkle fingers, laser fingers, just zap, zap, zoop. Which I'm really curious about how that's actually gonna work. Because, like, okay, so she shoots a laser beam out of her fingers, but what else is she doing? Is she extra fast? Is she like bullet resistant? Like, what's going on here? Is it Empress mode
Yeah.
for Reyna, but with sparkle fingers? I need to know. What's
I
going
hope
on
she's not
here.
bullet resistant. I think that would be.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
would be
probably
dumb.
not
That
that.
would be
Bullet
so dumb.
resistance.
Probably not that. If she's just like a rogue, she's just got an innate dodge buff. 50% of your shots that hit her actually miss.
That would be worse. Could you
Oh,
imagine
boy.
landing
No.
a headshot and it just whiffing?
Just like,
through?
nope.
Oh
Nope.
my god, that would be infuriating.
It would be amazing.
Now she has an aura, and when you step in the aura during her ultimate, all your bullets miss, and then she zaps you.
Dude,
God,
she's gonna be
please.
nuts.
My ranked
Please
experience in
no.
a nutshell.
She is gonna be nuts. It really is like they took Jet. They're like, everyone is complaining about Jet. Let's give them something to complain about.
The funniest thing is that Chamber came out, which was almost like a Jet in a sense. Like you could use the TPs as kind of like an
Right?
updraft, not an updraft, a dash and
It-
a tailwind, and now they're bringing out this, which is like
It is
they,
really
they,
cool.
they created like a watered down Jet,
Mhm.
and now they've created a Jet on steroids. Now every team can
Well-
have 3 Jets.
Hmm.
And the way I see it
Pick
is
your
like
favorite
they've
Jets.
given you alternatives for whatever part of Jet you enjoy the most, right?
Ooh.
Like Jet
Mhm.
always had that high like that ability to swap between really effective styles with like, oh, you can either play op really effectively or you can play entry really effectively. So now they've just taken the way that Jet plays entry and made it a character and taken the way that Jet plays op and made it a character. So like if you want to hard specialize into either of those, you have Neon or Chamber. But if you like the more well-rounded ability that Jet gives you, you can still play Jet. I really like it.
It is interesting.
Also, a really important point, like piggybacking off of that.
Go
So
for
the
it.
Knights are running the Knights Valor Rampage coming up soon, which includes agent bans and protections and whatever. And of course, this is being done with Riot, with Valorant. Like, this isn't one of their own kind of third-party events. It's done together. So this is clearly something that at the very least is being explored. So they need to have agents. I mean, there would never was any sort of a alternative to Jet for the longest time. Now they just brought out two, because you have like Omen, Viper, Astra, you know, like there's subtle differences, but they're all smokers. But then you look at someone like Jet, where there wasn't really anything else. So it feels like we are actually leaning towards, I mean, if we're getting a new agent every handful of months, like 3 months or something, I think we're moving very close to the position where we're going to be starting with bans and picks. And this seems like the way to do it. Make sure you have enough agents that have some overlap to make it viable.
Do you think they'd wind up? Now this opens a really interesting question to me, which is: do you think that if Riot wanted to move to agent bans and picks, which I suspect they do, do you think they would introduce that midway through this VCT year, or do you think they'd say that for an end of year change?
I think end of
I don't
year
think
would
you
be
do that
too
midway.
long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they don't like to wait.
Well,
They don't
it
like
kinda
to wait.
depends. Yeah,
But
I think
thing
Riot
is,
would
if-
introduce it. It would go terribly on the first iteration, and then they'd fix it.
But I mean, if
That
you
is
think
usually how
about
it
whenever they
goes.
bring out a map, even though they have a thing where it's like, oh, well, the map has been in the pool for X amount of time, now it's playable, and even then you get to a tournament and teams are like, no, I don't care that by the rules it's playable. Like, this is nonsense. You can't do this. And that's the other thing, right? Have been really good about listening to the community. So if they come out halfway through the year, 3/4 of the way through the year, and they're like, hey guys, now we have agent picks and bans, everyone's just gonna go, no. Like, save that shit for next year. It's not happening.
It's gonna be interesting. Oh, the video was hype. Video was really good. I think
That
she's
song, I'm immediate. The
That
second
song
this,
is a bop.
the second our show ends, I'm adding it to like my typical playlist,
Dude,
like my
Riot's-
everything playlist. in
Riot's
Spotify.
music-
Second it ends.
team is just top notch.
Yeah.
They really are. Big shout out to. I mean, the music team, the video production team is always just top notch. You really there's almost nothing to fault them about there. It's like every video is dope. So let's do a concrete catalog of what we think her abilities are at this point. She's got some sort of zoom extra speed ability. There is a slide, which I think is we were talking about this. We think it's probably just an aspect of the zoom, where if you're like zooming and you need to slide around cover, you crouch and zoom. She's got the double walls, which we're just seeing on video right now, which is just like better Phoenix, I guess, except it's gonna kind of, I mean, it limits. It's interesting. Is it better Phoenix? Because like with the Phoenix wall or the Viper wall, what you can do is you can isolate an angle to peek into that angle. With this, you're just isolating, you're just going forward, and having ability to entry in towards the site, which is going to be interesting. She's got the concuss, which is some sort of a bounce, explode, which looks like a concuss. We're not sure if it does anything else. It looks like maybe there's an AoE where it bounces. Not sure what that's going to be. And then she's got sparkle fingers, laser fingers.
Just electrocutes everyone, yeah.
I
don't know, it looks
think the
interesting.
wall is going to be better than Phoenix Wall, just
Okay.
because of the way it synergizes better with her kit, right?
With her
Like
kit,
you
yes.
put the wall up, you run through it, and you're immediately in an area of question. Whereas like Phoenix, the idea is that he puts the wall up and flashes through it, but nobody's getting caught by that anymore.
Yeah,
right?
I
So
always
I
view it
think
as-
I think the double wall is going to be better just because it synergizes better with her.
My question is, the complaint about duelist characters is always playing as one of their teammates, right? Where their kid is so selfish, and it's like, just do things to help
Yeah.
us. Entry at least. And her kit feels very selfish. Like,
Does it?
Yeah.
It's also hard entry though.
yeah,
right?
which
like
if-
it's
if-
you set yourself up, but you set yourself up and you are the space creator.
and I think that's going to be great for pro play, which is mostly what we're concerned about.
Yeah, that's
But I
true.
think it's going to be a
Yeah, obviously.
fucking nightmare in your games.
Oh, 100%.
Because like I would argue that the double wall is actually going to suck worse if you're a teammate, right? Because you're like, okay, we're gonna swing on this angle. Boom, double wall goes up, you can't see shit. And like you're a normal speed person moving through the wall. you're just kind of you're gonna be kind of stuck unless they get that kill. So your Neon's gonna double wall, zoom out, die immediately, and you're like, all right, we're gonna wait for their walls to go down, I guess.
I mean, it's good if you're a flashing character, right? Like if you're playing the Sky on your team or something, right?
Yeah.
The double wall goes up. You have a lot of angles on which you
Yeah,
can
I
flash
guess so.
from. Outside of that, yeah, in ranked play, it's gonna be kind of a nightmare.
It's gonna be interesting.
Absolutely.
I am really curious.
And then the 200 ping warlords, of course. As if we need speed added to that. That's gonna be a nightmare.
I'm betting the control is the cancel, or the slide is the cancel on her super speed. That's my bet.
It looks like it's a cancel that carries some of the momentum,
Yeah, so you can like
Right.
slide into cover.
which
and
makes
cancel
me
yourself.
wonder, like,
Your zip's up,
what
so-
happens, because I don't think we see in the video what happens when she's coming like off of a cliff. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I'm wondering how that momentum carries and how that's going to impact
If
some
she's
of like
like-
the running gun.
Yeah, if she slides, yeah, that would be really
Yeah,
interesting.
right. Like, could you imagine a Neon just like sliding over you on Fracture and just running gunning while
Yeah.
flying through the air? Like,
Or-
oh, that's gonna be
no.
wild.
Yeah, or you're coming out of window on. Yeah, that it's gonna be really spicy.
Bind is another one where that would work, right? Any window where you don't have to jump to get off of it, you can just slide off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting.
All right. I am very curious to see how this goes. I mean, based on the way this works, it'll be like another week, 2 weeks before, or it'll be like a week before she drops, and then another 2 weeks after that before
And then
she's
another
involved
two
in
before
pro
she's in
play.
pro.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Which is about when VCT starts, so
Oh
She-
no!
She also feels like one of these agents that, you know how there's agents like Astra where there's a learning curve for pros to figure out how to actually use her effectively.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Not with this one. No, super straightforward. If you can't figure
I
out
think-
how to use the zoom shoot girl effectively, like, come on.
I think the only ability
Zoom,
I
zoom,
think
shoot,
the
go.
the zoom and the zoom and the wall are obviously super straightforward.
Mhm.
At least in principle, right? The
Yeah.
concuss with the bounce that leaves potentially like 2 zones. I think that'll have a certain learning curve where that's maybe where we'll see some of the better Neons early on. The ones that pick that up quicker, alongside the alt, but it just depends on how the alt works.
What if
The other question I
concuss
have
leaves
is, does
stim
the
beacons
wall
behind
curve?
just to make it
Oh,
even
God.
worse for Brim?
You just bounce it off the floor in front, like
Yeah.
on like the
Yeah.
entry, and then like try and double bounce it.
because it made like a
that would
blue
be
circle,
wild.
and
I don't-
just historically, when things are light, like blue colors, they're usually good for you as opposed to murder
I
you.
think that's just because that's her color scheme, though.
Yeah.
I think it will
Yeah,
still be like an enemy thing because like in the video, the Neon is throwing it at the ascent doorway, right?
Mhm.
And you wouldn't try to stim
Yeah.
the closed doorway for your team. You would think the doorway is open and try to like molly it off, right?
yeah. Yeah,
So
that's fair.
I think it's just 2 concussed zones.
Maybe it's like a
I want to know about can the walls curve or do they have to go?
I don't think
'Cause,
so.
Like
I'm
all
gonna
the
bet
walls
straight.
curve except for Vipers. So it would be interesting if you could like create like a tunnel. That'd be pretty cool.
I'm gonna bet it goes straight.
Seems unlikely.
But I
it'd
am,
be cool.
yeah. I feel like that might be
Yeah.
too OP if you could bend it into an angle, because then you can really isolate a peak. It's like, yeah, I bent it straight into the spot that you're holding. No one can see what is happening here. Goodbye.
She's a lightning bender. That's what she is.
Lightning bender. This is gonna be interesting.
It's a firebender, but like next level. Yeah.
There you go. It's gonna be spicy. It's gonna be spicy. Shall we?
We've spent 20 minutes talking about the new character.
I mean, it just
Well
dropped.
deserved.
It literally dropped as we were going live, because that's how Riot likes to do their news.
I
Right as we
know,
go
but,
live, we
like-
have to talk about it. How are we not going to? We have to give the
Every
people
time.
what they want, and they want Neon. Let's talk about
True.
roster moves. Let's talk about roster moves. Those are happening too. That's what the people want too. So let's head into our normal run it back. We'll talk about roster moves. X10 are out of the org. They're apparently just done with their contracts and said, I bet we can get paid more by someone else. Which, you know what? Chase that bag.
It's valid.
Here's my only question.
Yeah.
Without the big draw of Patapan, does anyone pick up this team?
That's a good question.
Oh, I don't know.
Because they looked kind of
It's tough.
lackluster in the months where Patapan was like healing his wrist, right? Like there were like 4 or 5 months where Patapan was out because he was healing his wrist, and X10 did not do well that
No, they
entire
sucked.
time. Admittedly, they didn't pick up another player, right? Like if I remember correctly, they didn't pick up like a Jet to sub in instead of Patapan. They just moved like one of their bench players or one of their coaches, I think, into that role instead, at least for a while. So like there is room for X10 to still do really well. Before they picked up Patapan, they were still pretty good in SEA. I don't know if we see like that same champions run without Patapan though, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the issue.
Unless they find someone like super good to poach from like another team, or maybe I don't know. I think it's
there are some other good Jets, right?
I mean,
like if there's an org willing to pay for it and thinks that they can find a Jet player that'll suitably like sub in for Patapan, there's a world where most of this X10 roster stays together. They have been together for like over a year now. But it's also possible that like X10 just break up and it gets piecemealed.
All right,
that seems more likely to me.
Here's my guess. Here's my proposal for the X10 guys, and this is obviously going to be hopeful thinking. Don't go for someone established. Don't go for a poach. Go find the most cracked out Thai kid playing, random MM games,
like some 16-year-old
in the world that you can find.
Not a bad idea.
The guy who you're just like, he's probably cheating, but then it turns out he's not. Like, go find that dude who's just headshotting everyone in some, cyber cafe somewhere. Sign that dude. Because that's what you need.
Those kids are the best, dude.
Yeah,
that's
the
best. Yeah. That's what Zekin was, right?
Yeah. There's lots of them.
I remember I casted Zekin in his first ever tournament. We got like so many complaints from other teams, like this kid, he has no experience, has to be cheating. Like it was so funny. And Zekin turns out he's just cracked.
Accusations are a rite of passage for cracked out young gamers, and that's where I think they need to go with it. Because honestly, like, I don't know who they could possibly poach that would really be what they need in terms of what Patapan was for this team, right? In the Asian region. I don't think there's an obvious answer. And they're all Thai, so I assume they speak Thai in their comms. So go find the most cracked out Thai player you can and sign them and go for that. That's my proposal. Yeah. I will be curious to see what they do in terms of getting an org and getting support, because I one of the other things for a lot of these teams, and I'm just going to say this, I have no idea what the situation is with X10, no clue. But I know that a lot of the Southeast Asian organizations, especially before their teams gain any notoriety, aren't necessarily paying that well. Like maybe they're paying okay for the region, but in comparison to an NA pro, it ain't nothing. So that's why you saw like Bren move over to Secret, because Secret is an organization with funding that can pay substantially more than a Bren Esports can. So it'd be cool to see these guys grab a bit of a bag. We'll see. I am curious. It does seem like there's a burgeoning audience, so I'd imagine some international orgs got to have some interest in the region.
Speaking of cross-regional paymenty things, this isn't actually part of our thing, but I just want to like touch on it for half a second. The champion skin bundle has apparently raised $7.5 million for the champs teams. So there you go.
Hell yeah.
That's pretty good. That's not half bad.
Which for like an American team, I mean that's still pretty decent.
Yeah,
like
for an American team, it's like,
a Brazilian
cool.
team, like
and X10 is like, yoink, thank you very much. Enjoy your new organization.
Yeah, pretty much.
We will take our $500,000. This will fund our work for another decade, and whoosh, we out.
Could you imagine? God.
I mean, they probably. I don't know what. Oh well, no, actually, I guess if the contracts were ending,
there's a chance
they probably got nothing for Patapan, did they? But. Yeah, I bet you those players don't sniff a dime of that money if it goes to the org first.
Yeah, it's possible.
You want to leave us? Okay. Yoink. Moving on. Zest back for Vision Strikers. So he's off of a medical leave, coming back in. Vision Strikers just adding more people they can play over Lakia.
Oh, God. that is the most tilting thing to have come out of champs. The most tilting thing. And Masters as well. Like, this is an ongoing thing, and they just don't let him freaking play. I don't get it, man. What is the thought process there?
Whatever it is, I hope it's changed. There's 2 months between end of Champions and a month and a half, I guess. End of Champions and start of next VCT. Fingers crossed. We stop getting the save the Lakia strats until we've gone home.
Hashtag
save the Lakia strats for 2022.
Free Lakia. I want Nut Lakia back. That's just my favorite team abbreviation. I just need it back. All right, moving on.
I've
You never heard that for New
Okay.
Turn? Yeah, you weren't on part of the show back when I
No.
said that all the time.
Oh no!
Yeah, just
Okay,
every
new
time I
turn,
filled
that
out my
makes
little
sense.
bracket, it was just nut in big letters because it's just great. Um,
Yeah.
Okay,
anyway,
fair enough.
I'm a mature 28-year-old. I'm an adult. I'm an adult. Roka, good old Danny G. Roka is out of EG. Now, this is one of those classic, they're kind enough to release me early for my contract, which means that he was benched but wanted the opportunity to seek other teams without a buyout. And they said, yeah, probably okay.
Yep.
I think this is like a little bittersweet because I think Roka is good, and I hope he finds another
Mm.
team. EG needs to make changes though. They have been kind of abysmal.
EG have made changes though. Like, I'm actually at my wit's end with this org at this point. Like, they have done so many moves, replaced so many players. They've gone from having like female players to having an all-male roster. They got in Potter to come coach. They have done so much. They lent out Temperature to like Gen G or something ridiculous. They're continuously doing something, and the results just stay here forever.
They're cursed.
There is no plateau. There is no peak. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't even know what to do at this point. Like, if I was EG, I'd just be like, I don't know.
They broke
Somebody
up
else
moon
figure it out.
raccoons. They've got the curse of the moon raccoon
God.
following them. The shadow of the moon raccoon just floating overhead. No, I mean, honestly, look, here's gonna be the thing. You look at the decisions that EG management have made, the players that they've decided to stick by and build around when there were clear fractions in the roster versus the talent that they've let go or cut. Like the fact that Alexander and Temperature are out of the team, and that you've got
Oof.
3 players who didn't have much success on other rosters in the team, right? It's
Boostio's
like,
pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I watch Evil Geniuses, Boostio's the only player I'm like, yeah, consistently doing well. Consistently. Well,
Yeah, there's
that's
that
not even
bias.
true. That's not even true, actually. That's not even true. It's not that he's consistently doing well. It's that EG only win whenever I see Evil Geniuses, and this is a small sample size. I don't watch their games a lot. But whenever I watch them, they win rounds where Boostio does well and lose rounds where Boostio doesn't do well.
which is
That's an
Not a good
oversimplification
sign.
by a lot.
No,
but
but-
still.
It's a classic thing that you can look at with certain teams where it's like, what is your win condition? Your win condition is that this player pops off, and if they don't, you lose. And
Your
that's
win condition is
not a place.
someone, probably this guy, gets
Yeah.
4 kills.
Someone go burr.
I feel like we
That's-
need other strategies here.
Not a way to build
Yeah,
a
that's
team.
not really a strategy, is it?
I am
That's a
curious
Hail
to see
Mary.
what they're actually going to field going into 2022 because you're right, they have just been.
Well, and you're running out of time for the first VCT cycle.
Yep. I mean, the fact that so many orgs are making
Apparently-
changes at this close to the VCT cycle, like it's one thing in NA where it starts at the end of the month, kind of. In
That's the
EU,
thing, yeah.
it starts the 10th, right? Am I crazy?
As
It's
far
next
as I
week?
know,
Yeah.
yes. As far as I know, rosters are locked. As far as I know, I could be
For
way
EU.
off base on that one, but from what I understand, rosters are now locked for EU. So
Wow.
boofers.
Every time I'm
But
seeing
I mean,
one
I
of these
suppose that
changes
gives
come
NA
through.
like a week.
Yeah, something like that. It's just it is amazing to me that so many of these organizations who have had a lot of them have had a long time to be strongly considering their changes, right? Because they were out of the VCT
Mhm.
back in September or whatever. That they're making all these moves right now.
They're just scrambling together a roster now. And it's good for orgs that, got their shit together in the beginning of November. And we're like, hey, here's our 5-person roster. We've maybe made one change to round it out. But otherwise we've been playing together and been doing well. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, teams like Pioneers, teams like a Crew, right? Like these quote unquote tier 2 guys, they're gonna I hope they're gonna make some waves because I think they've certainly earned it.
Yeah. It's interesting. It is very interesting to see all the changes. I do wonder whether orgs were playing a bit of a game of brinksmanship and hoping that options would be released who would be better for them. And then, as
Probably.
we've heard, buyouts are atrocious and some people are just being held in contract jail. And it's like, oh, they're not. I don't know. Fuck it. Sign somebody. Figure it out now. Just interesting. But moving on down the list. Quinn and Chase are out of Ghost. Changes coming to Ghost. Quinn is a free
Yeah.
agent once again. So he's out there in the open. No buyout. I'm sure he'll wind up somewhere.
He's got to land somewhere. Wynn's good, dude.
Yeah.
Probably on
I mean,
Evil
all of the
Geniuses at this
players-
rate. I mean, low-key,
I don't know if I
he
can afford him.
feels like an EG pickup, which is, someone who is cool, generally well regarded in the scene, but hasn't really had a lot of success on other teams. EG's
Sure,
like,
I get what
yes,
you're saying.
snap him up. Yes.
What I find interesting is that he actually writes, I prefer Sova, and I love that because obviously he was always like this jet player, and then he like fudge. What was that first team that he was on? Why have I forgotten
Gen G.
this?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Was it Gen G? Yeah.
Pretty
And
sure.
then he left Gen
Gen
G,
G.
and then he went on to the Sova role, and now he's like, yeah, put me on that Sova. And I saw some of the comments there, and some of the players on the team that were like, oh, we're really sorry that it didn't work out. So clearly, this isn't a thing of like we think you're bad at the game. It was just a vision and a direction that the team is going in, and unfortunately, you kind of don't fit into that. But it was also weird about Chase because I think that he played one tournament with Ghost, and they like won it, or they did really well. And they're just like, okay, we're done with you now. It's a bit of an oof. I'm curious to see who they're going to bring in because again, we're getting dangerously close to what I assume is roster lock.
No, I think Chase was on that team for a while.
A year?
On Wikipedia,
Was
it's
it?
saying he was on it since
What
last
am I
January.
thinking of then?
Yeah.
I might be thinking of
He's been on
someone
this team
else
for a
then,
long
like a different
time.
roster move. It's also possible.
I think Chase has been here for a long time. Yep.
Oh,
He's been
I'm
playing for a
looking
long
at achievements instead of matches. That's why. So there was one
okay.
tournament that they won, which was in July. Okay, yeah. Then this
Yeah,
is
I was all the way
making more
back
sense.
in
He's
July.
played a
there,
lot.
yeah.
He's
Fair
played a
enough.
lot. Yeah, I mean, so I'm not as familiar with Chase, but I am familiar with Wynn's history a little bit. He is, by all accounts, like the nicest dude. Like genuinely just like a really nice dude, great teammate, always willing to do whatever he needs to do for the team, willing to sacrifice roles, whatever, to make things happen. He's just not always got the firepower to match, which is why you see teams move on from him, but you never see a team happy to move on from him, is basically the way I would describe it. Because he's one of these guys who's just such a good dude and such a good teammate that it's like you love having them in the team, but if you're looking for a little more firepower, he's probably not the guy you're going for. If you want a glue guy, if you want a level-headed guy, if you want an experienced guy, that's a great person to look to as Gwen. So yeah, it's sort of the way I think of him as a player. Moving on, Gangsta moving to Knights from Immortals. Two-part question. What do we think of this Knights roster at this point as it's shaping up? And second part, does Immortals have a team? It's just shot up at this point, right? Like that's the only player they have left. And he was linked to a potential move at one point that didn't come to fruition, I don't think. So is Immortals done with Valorant? What's going on here?
Maybe they're just gonna have one of those like the day before VCT. They're just gonna be like, surprise! And they're just gonna have like this cracked out team of 16-year-olds that they found in ranked.
Maybe.
Because they've always been like a farm team, right? We've been talking about that since we started the show a year and a half ago, whatever the hell it was. That's kind of their thing. Here, Overwatch, wherever it is, that's what they do. So maybe they're just gonna show up with like some absolutely crazy talent that no one's ever seen or heard of before and take everyone by storm, sell the players, and start again. Because this doesn't feel like a team that's rebuilding. This feels like this doesn't feel like a team that's like patching holes. It feels like a team that's completely rebuilding from the ground up. Like if you're replacing one or two players, you're trying to fix a problem. But when you like scrap everyone to start again, that feels like there's a purpose behind that beyond just, I don't know, like fixing the team, right?
The weird thing for Immortals is it's not like the typical, like, okay, we're going to cut everyone at once and start from scratch. They've just been, like, bleeding players for the last 6 to 8 months and not playing in any tournaments. Like, this Gangster move is a formality at this point. Gangster's been playing up with Knights since, like, October or something, right? It's not surprising whatsoever to see this finally get put on paper, especially with VCT around the corner. There's no way Immortals fields a roster for this first VCT unless, like, they did what you said and they just have a bunch of cracked 16-year-olds in the back room that they've been keeping secret for the last 8 months, right? It's like literally like they have like literally one player signed or something. Isn't Shot Up still
It's just
technically on that roster?
Shot Up
Shut
still
Up,
on that
yeah.
roster, yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
such a shame because he's such a good player. I want.
He's so good.
What was the?
Um,
I'm blanking on this. There was a rumor that he was, or there was a report that he was being looked at for somebody. And
I hope so.
Cannot remember who
I think
it
I
was.
missed that. I missed
The-
that.
I mean, the whole Immortals org, like even outside of Valorant, just has always had its issues.
Well,
Especially with rosters.
I bet Gunba left, and they were just like, "All right, that's our Valorant team. Like he was our Valorant
Oof.
guy. Like we're just gonna sell everybody
Certainly
and
possible.
wrap up this particular expedition into the Valorant space and take our bag and
Is-
go."
Who's the other guy? Is Packing 10?
Packing 10, yeah, Packing 10
Still
is their
doing-
GM
Packing
and
10,
head
yeah,
coach.
He's
moved
still
to he moved to Valorant.
Weird. I like Packing 10.
Yeah,
Hmm.
well. So Gangsta
Doesn't
on
matter-
Knights though.
Doesn't matter now. Or at least
Nice
Gangsta
more
by
Knights.
the
Let's
way.
talk about the Knights. Let's talk about the Knights. Hit me with it, Sam. How do you feel about this Knights roster?
It seems like they'd been doing well recently, but we've seen more from their academy roster in the last few weeks or so. I feel like we haven't seen a ton of the Knights roster itself. It almost feels like they kind of went undercover to like start their secret training in the mountains for VCT. But prior to that, they had been doing reasonably well. They'd been getting some good results. They had swapped up a couple players here and there, and I'm looking forward to seeing the reemergence. And Gangsta, I mean, he was a good player as well. I'm not sure who he replaces. That I can't think of off the top of my
he
head.
essentially doesn't. I mean, at this point, he doesn't really replace anyone. It's been,
He's been
3
playing with
months
them,
that he's
yeah.
been playing on this roster.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
This is just it being put
It's
in
just a
paper more than
formality,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay.
looking at VLR. Wait, is this accurate? No. Okay, never mind. Okay, hold on. I was on the wrong page. Give me a second. Boop, boop, boop.
We're getting trolled by VLR Liquipedia.
No,
he
it's
made the
just being
swap
trolled by
over
me.
in November.
In
So
November.
it's been 2
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
So it's mid-November. The
Yeah,
first thing he
okay.
played with them was the Winter Championship Open 6 with the Knights. That was back at end of November, like the 22nd,
Yeah.
I think. And then he's just played the Open 12 with them now officially as a member of the roster. So that's the change up. So he's been there for 2 months. This was like I'm sure they knew that they were going to play with Gangsta. It was just negotiations between the org for why it was announced now. Or his contract ran out with Immortals. I don't know. Maybe they just waited him out.
Possible.
That
It
could
It
be
is
to be
January,
fair.
right?
It
Maybe
is-
that's what happened. Immortals
That's what's-
signed him last January,
Yeah.
and his
But the-
contract finally ran out.
The only thing is if that were true, I bet Shot Up would be free too. Although you don't know what length they signed different players to potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. Moving on though, I think the Knights are interesting, and will be interesting to see what they do in VCT. They were always sort of that like all of last year, they were that team that was making noise in the third party tournaments, but couldn't really push into the VCT conversation. And we'll see if they can change that narrative this year. XSET have announced cryo cells. They've got cryo cells. He is reportedly replacing Pure, which makes sense. You can see Jet front and center there.
Yeah.
Sure.
How do we feel about that move? Paul, you want to
I'm
hit
not
me with your
super
take?
familiar with cryo cells personally. I think he was on like Soar.
Soar, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he was on
Soar?
Soar, and before that, he was on Big Frames. And Big Frames made some like massive waves back then. They were like one of the
Well, they
top
became
tier
Soar.
That was a
TQ
while
teams
ago,
for the
though.
longest time. Yeah, they became Soar. Yeah.
They did
Um,
the classic move, which is an org picks up Nerfed's team, and then they cut Nerfed, and then they're like, "Why aren't we having success anymore?"
Why is the team sucking?
I wonder why. Oh man,
Because they
full-
They
full-
backslid badly.
Yeah, full confession. I love
Oh.
Nerfed as a human being, big Jimmy fan. But he's also you saw it with Renegades too, where they picked up his team, and then they cut him, and they stunk. And it's like, what? Why did this happen? And it's just the classic like.
Pika Gas.
I understand why organizations look at Nerfed and cut him because he's a real adult with a wife and kids and commitments and time and thing. He's not a cracked out 16-year-old. But then if you look at the history of his teams and how they suddenly start being worse when they cut Jimmy. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about cryocells. I'm going off on a tangent. Cryocells, XSET, very interesting.
As usual.
XSET was that team that was just below the cusp, but like people thought they were going to make it. I thought they were going to make it, and they didn't quite make it. Now they make the change. Does this give them the firepower to pop over?
I mean,
I feel like we're in a weird spot where it's
I think it's hard to say.
to tell. Yeah.
Right? It's really early to tell. Cryocells isn't a player I'm super familiar with. There aren't a ton of Jets on the market though that I can think of, right? Like this might be a synergy thing, this might be a playstyle thing. Pure R was always really good for that team, but I don't know if I would say Pure R was like the front and center player, like definitely a phenomenal player, able to put up huge numbers, right? But I don't think this is the worst move. It's one of those wait and see kind of things, right? In a month, if XSET are doing really well, we'll call this the most big brain move ever. And if in a month they can't get onto any sites and their entry looks super weird, we'll be like, what was this move? Why did you do that?
I feel like that is you've basically summed up the entire podcast.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That's pretty much what we do.
And the moral of the story is
welcome to Press 4.
hindsight is 2020. Pure
Pretty much.
I will say, big Pure fan again. He's an East Coast LAN guy. He's an East Coast player.
Yeah,
I've known him since he was literally coming to LANs with his parents. So I like the dude. I think that I imagine making changes for that XSET roster is a little difficult, at least from the outside looking in. They've seemed like a pretty tight knit group. You see all they're going out to dinner and that they're like being the parents of the young children and all that stuff, and it's very good memes. It's wholesome content. Pure is still under contract. I don't know whether a move is on the horizon or whether he's going to sit on their bench or what's going to happen there.
Aren't there rumors about Pure? I don't know.
The rumors were that he was out of the team. I don't know if there was a rumor of a destination.
That would do it then.
Yeah.
There have been so many rumors; it's been hard to keep up. I've actually ignored like 90% of rumors because it's silly season at this point. So, yeah.
You gotta follow the rumors, Sam, for this podcast. Then we can use them for this. All right, moving on. We'll stop talking about cryocells to XSET. I think XSET is going to be really spicy to watch. They just maybe lack that little extra dose of firepower. Now they've got another youth movement player to bring that through. A Proto's out of LG. That LG roster, we know their new roster. They've made a change. So Proto's on the bench. He's been doing a lot of the streaming thing. So even if he is stuck in contract jail or whatever it is, I'm sure he can rock that content creator lifestyle. Another good dude from the CS days, Mr. Alex Protopapas. I will be sad to see him out of LG. That was a fun team at the beginning of the year, man. That was a fun team,
right? Yeah. Like that, like OG LG lineup, like making waves. I really like a Proto, right? I tune into his streams relatively consistently for how little I watch individual streamers. Really cool guy. I stole his crosshair a million months ago. I still use the original a Proto crosshair, that little circle. And this was a move when I saw it. I was like, what are you doing? And then LG, since have been doing really well. So I'm like, okay, fair enough, I guess. Mm-hmm. I guess you know what you're doing, surprisingly enough. So I can't knock them, right? They just won like the NSG Open yesterday, right? Like the Winter Champs Open. Yeah. So
they did.
I hope it's good moves for both of them. I hope a Proto ends up in a place where he's happy because I always like to see him play.
Now,
one of those things where like the skill probably wasn't the problem, but some kind of like inner team dynamic. And it really sucks when that happens and when you're unable to, because now he's kind of chilling, and the chances of him, hopefully he gets snapped up in the next week or so and is able to play in the first VCT, but we don't know. So the timing is really iffy for him. It's a little unfortunate, but I guess it's a good move for LG.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It is really interesting as well because I think he was the final member of the OGLG roster that's off. He gone. He was one of the very early members of this team. So yeah, kind of interesting that a Proto's now out of it. His join date was back in August of last year, which was also when he wasn't like complete. No, that was when they got picked up. Was it? No, they got picked up in July of last year. No. 2020.
July
Yep. Okay,
no,
it's been
no,
2
it was
years.
2020.
That's
yeah.
2 years. I forget. I'm
Sorry.
mixing up my dates. Yes.
We're in
I'm very
2022
confused.
now, Mike.
Anyway, a Proto is part of that OG roster. Yes, again, 2022 doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a real year to me. A Proto was part of that original roster. He's the last piece, I believe, to be off of that original roster. So full turnover. But what I will say is, you remember last year, LG took a ton of momentum from playing in these open tournaments, from playing in the lower tournaments, and really building up some speed, and
That's
then
true.
headed into VCT and made waves in VCT. So, from a narrative perspective, would be kind of cool if they go off of an open tournament win, and then they rock on into VCT strong.
Hell
fun.
yeah.
Hopefully they could carry that into the later stages of the year this time.
Yeah,
instead
not just kind of fizzle out at the start
instead of
the
what
year.
happened in 2021.
Team, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, is Mata, B-Dog, Dazzle, Tig, and Moose at this point. Moose
Yes.
joined in February
I
of last
think
year, so he's the most
Two of
tenured
those
player.
players still have to be technically signed, I think.
Yes, the only players signed right now are Dazzle, Tig, and Moose.
Okay.
So Mata and B-Dog are not signed, but based on the fact that they just won an event with Mata and B-Dog doing a lot of the firepowering,
probably a
I would
formality.
imagine that they do.
Seems likely.
Yeah.
Feels like that would happen. I'd be surprised if that move didn't come to fruition at this point, especially since VCT is in 2 weeks. Moving on. What time is it? Oh, moving on quickly. Okay, holy cow. All right.
Yeah, definitely.
We've done the thing again. We've done the thing, as we so
We're
often
so bad
do.
at this.
We are so bad at this. All right, Xander to version 1. I mostly just wanted to look at this Photoshop image again. His head is so large in comparison to
Oh
his
my god,
body.
it's so bad.
Come on, teams. Come on.
I hate when orgs do this.
I mean, just get
You know
better
what?
at the.
I would rather.
Here's what you do. You go, instead of photoshopping their head onto a different torso, you tell your player to put on a white t-shirt, and then you Photoshop your jersey onto their white t-shirt. Just
Here's
that's
what you do.
the way to do it.
Here's what you do.
Okay.
You do this exact thing, except you make it more
You
exaggerated.
made his head bigger.
right? You make the body
Oh,
like
God.
8 pixels
Turn him into
in
a
width,
bobblehead.
and then exactly, a bobblehead.
Low-key,
right?
that would actually be better.
You know it's never gonna look good.
That would be
That
so.
would be
yeah.
better.
You full send on it.
Yeah, you
It's a- you're
bobblehead it,
leaning
then
into
it's
it, yeah.
aesthetic, it's a choice, as opposed to it being like, no, we just
Or
don't know
just
proportions.
send the guy some merch.
Well, it's
Like
probably
delay the freaking announcement
Well, I mean, it
by
would
like
take-
3 days and send him a t-shirt.
postal service
I
is
mean,
unreliable. You gotta rock it.
Bro, I live in South Africa, and even we can get a shirt to a place in a day or two. Like,
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah,
do
but
that.
that costs money.
The thing is, in the U.S., what we did is we actually no, it's better now. It's better now. Our previous administration made a public
We
policy
don't
of
have time to go on a
defunding the
postal,
postal
tangent.
service. Anyways, not going to do that. Not going to attack public services here. Moving on.
not today.
Anbox. Big moves for Anbox, which makes sense. It's a lot of their players were getting yoinked elsewhere. We've got Odorous, Jonas 6, which is probably Jonas, and Lear. Obviously, we're familiar with Odorous. There was that whole weird stint with V1 where he joined the team and then left the team
Mhm.
immediately. Still kind of want to know what the hell happened there.
Yeah.
But on
We have another
Anbox
similar
now,
situation.
this is joining Vice and Mummy. So this would be Odorous, Jonas 6,
Yes.
Lear, Vice, and Mummy. I am kind of curious about a
pretty dope team.
few. It's a pretty dope team. I'm curious about 2 big questions with this team, and then I want big impressions. Who's going to call Odorous or Vice? And who's going to op, Mummy or Odorous? Those are, I think, the
First-
immediate questions to me.
The first thing I'm going to say is take my rant about EG and just copy paste.
I feel okay.
That's
So here's the thing for Anbox, right? All right, Anbox. It wasn't EG. Just make fucking weird choices. Anbox
they
get
never-
their
they
best
never had a
player
start.
post, right? They had Android.
That's
Android
true.
was nuts. Android went elsewhere, and he wanted to go elsewhere, and they sold
Yeah.
him elsewhere. Like once a player wants to go somewhere else, it's probably in your best interest to move them. Then you had
Yeah,
Yay.
the difference between
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the difference between EG and Anbox is Anbox has stints of success where they've picked up good players,
I
and then they get the bag,
suppose,
and then they
yeah.
get the bag. And then
whereas
they move that
EG
player on
just
and get
never
the bag.
has those. Not anymore. Not for a very long
Yeah.
time.
Andbox has consistently had a thing where they set up one player to just be absolutely nuts, and then they sell that player up the pipeline. Which I get it. If you have El Diablo on your roster and Envy comes knocking and says, "Hey, come to Berlin with us," you can't be as an org be like, "No,
You
gonna
can't
sell
have
the
him. you know, take candle.
Yeah. And I think these moves are great. Jonah 6, Lear, those two have been doing super well in a lot of like the smaller tournaments. The Odorous situation is interesting. I'd have to imagine it's the two Andbox players still taking up those roles, right? Like I could not fathom Odorous Mummy rather not
I would
not
expect
playing his
I would expect
typical
Mummy to
opping
op.
jet role, especially since either way. And then I imagine Vice has just been with the team longer. There's a better chance, I think, of him calling, but Odorous has had success calling on some other teams as well. So like, it's hard for me to pin that down exactly. That'll just come down to how they feel about each other. And I'm not sure if this is like, because like this isn't one of those like things with Knights, right? Where like they've been trialing in a bunch of tournaments and they're like, we've had success. Let's sign the players. Andbox have been kind of MIA for 2 months, while most of these players have been playing with other like random teams, pug teams, or like I think Joda 6 was still playing with the Mafia up until recently. So I have to wait and see how the team actually fits together. But on paper, all 5 individual parts, I am thumbs up.
Yeah, Andbox's last performance was at the beginning of December with not this roster at all. It was Mami, Mata, Huyn, Harmful, Vice, and then GOG1 played a map. So yeah, no, it's a completely different. It's definitely a completely new project. I assume they're scrimming, but yeah, they've got no live action on this testing it yet. I'm curious. I'm curious to see how this one does. I think it could be good. I think again, you could see a situation where you're setting up either one of the 2 new pickups or one of the 2 less known pickups in Jonas and Lear to be the next big firepower player, or where you could be seeing. I mean, back in Kansas City Pioneers, it was Odorous who was popping off. Back in that
and
team,
Mummy's
right?
a really good player, right? Like there's a lot of just like straight up star power on this team if you allocate it properly.
Yeah, this could be fun.
See, that's the thing though, because like if you have more than like 2 players trying to be the star firepower player, I mean, we've seen that happen in teams, and when someone isn't willing to step back and be a more supportive player, then it can all just fall apart. So those questions of who is going to be calling, that's the big one. Like the opping jet, but the calling thing, that's the big one for me, because that is going to dictate a lot of how well these guys are going to do.
All right, moving on, because time is the thing. The guard are dropping Psalm. Psalm's out of the guard. They haven't played anything yet. Well,
I mean, the guard kind of flopped on like their big debut. Right, like they went to the Fullerton Fragadelphia. They played like a lot of pug teams really close, and then ended up losing out way sooner than they wanted to. It doesn't surprise me that an org this big would make a move like this when they have enough money to just buy pretty much whoever they want to replace Psalm.
I will also say, Psalm was bottom of the board at every single one of their matches in Fullerton. Nope, except one, which we don't have stats for. So yes, probably every single one.
Probably all of them.
And also, the thing that we also have to look at is the 3 players, Psalm, Valen, and Net, were announced before the team was actually a complete project, right?
Yeah.
So they were signed before MC was brought in, before the full 5 were brought in. So now you've got all the full 5 together. You're watching how the team performs. It's completely reasonable to be like, sorry, bud. You're not going to work.
This doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're cutting Saya player. The dude's still friggin' nasty.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
even in their games that were way too close, Saya player was hitting the most disgusting fucking shots.
I love all the Overwatch bias. Every time there's an Overwatch player, like
it's not Overwatch bias. He literally took a 1 pixel blade storm shot on a flying jet.
It is exactly the same as Mike, though. Mike does the same thing with CS players.
Well, I mean, look, you got to know people's histories, and they're either CS players or they're or Overwatch players, or they're cracked out 16-year-olds. Moving on, 100 Thieves are bringing in Eccles. He's being brought in.
They are.
We're yoinking
You can't
them
beat him, poach him.
So this is a rumor as of right now, right?
It's a report, yes, but
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
okay.
I'm gonna feel
I
good
mean,
about this
generally,
report.
these are pretty accurate. I think George Davis
Generally, yeah.
generally does a good
Geedy's,
generally does a good
Geedy's
job. Of
only
the
misses
sources
in his
stuff.
shit posts. He doesn't miss in his reporting.
Yeah, seriously, that is
It's
so
Twitter,
true. Oh,
George.
man.
If you're watching this, for the love of
True.
God, dude, your Twitter is awful. But your
Stop.
reporting's really good. Your reporting is really good. He's one of those guys where every time I read his reports, I'm like, man, this guy's so put together, and I forget that he's 21, and then I look at his Twitter and I
You
remember.
read a shit post, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And I just
Stop.
the shit posts. Anyway, this is gonna be interesting. New IGL, obviously.
So
coming
here's
in.
the thing.
Yep, hit me with it.
Shout out
From
that
what I
NA money.
understand, IGLs are a big problem in NA, but like everywhere. And it's very difficult to train an IGL. Like you can become good at it through time, but it's not something that you're just going to pick up in a week or two. It's not
Right.
like, okay, we need you to learn this agent, go to the range, go learn some lineups, go watch some VODs. Like you can't do that to be an IGL. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that teams are starting to look beyond their own borders. And it's not just an NA thing. There's a Thai team that tried to pick up 2 Swedish players, and unfortunately, I think it was a Thai team, and then Singaporean team, and then Singapore shut down its borders, and so they've now had to find replacements for those 2 Swedish players. But this is a thing that's happening. Like regions are branching out and looking for talent elsewhere, and I think that the reason it didn't really happen in the first year was we were still kind of feeling out what talent there was, what do players look like, what can they potentially bring to the table, and this is the perfect time because obviously Nip just went and decided to move to Brazil. It's a choice. And NA, let's face it, after champs, they did do well. I'm not going to be that cow that just like stomps on NA and says they were terrible and I'm actually just talking nonsense. They did well, but they didn't do as well as they wanted to. Let's face facts here. So why spend 6 to 8 months trying to develop a talent when you have the money to just buy one?
And I mean, it's 100 Thieves, right?
Yeah.
100 Thieves have been blowing up their roster slowly but surely for the last 2 months, 3
Yep.
months, right? Like, it feels like the day I got on this show back in November was like the day that 100 Thieves decided, like, all right, we get rid of this player next week, get rid of this player next week, get rid of this player, right? So it does, this move is not surprising whatsoever to me.
Look, Nitro was headed to Team Liquid. They needed a new former Team Liquid player. They yoinked Eccles back. It
Of
makes
course.
sense. Keep
Yes.
everything balanced. Perfectly balanced as all things must be. Moving on. There's a new G2 team. There's a new G2. I love, first of all, shout outs once again, G2. Great announcement video. Social media memers.
always,
top
yeah.
tier.
So
top
good.
tier. Hoodie and Meadow in, Pipson in as coach. How do we feel about new G2, Sam?
Really good players, but this is not the
But.
first time that G2 have picked up some really good players and then didn't do shit with it. I mean, we saw it when they poached half of Heretics towards the end of last year, and we like spoke about it on the show, and we're like, all right, who got the raw deal in this one? Because it wasn't G2. They got some really phenomenal firepower out of that, and then they didn't do much with it. So while I love the players and of course the coach that they've brought on, and I think that there is a ton of potential here, I feel like G2 have a tendency to drop the ball. And I don't want to see that happen again, but I'm at a point where I'm just like, I've kind of lost faith in G2. So
You don't
maybe
want
they
to
prove
see
me
it,
wrong,
but you
but, like,
expect it.
kind
Right?
of, yeah.
Expect disappointment, and
This
you'll
must be
never
what their
be
league fans
disappointed.
feel like, like it's like G2 staple.
I have an interesting question for you, Paul. I'll
Mhm.
direct it to you, and then Sam, you can feel it as well. Is this Mixwell's last ride, right? Because he's been the guy who was their franchise player, who's been the face of the team, who's, he's everything that you want in a player, except, and he's been at times the firepower, but hasn't always been consistently the firepower. But he's the guy who's been safe in all these roster moves so
Yeah.
far. Is this Mixwell's
Mm.
last ride? If this version of the team doesn't have the success they're looking for, is Mixwell on the outs?
That's a good question, right? Because I think G2 as an org, at least based on what I know from them, League and like Rainbow Six as well, they have stuck by players that have struggled just because of like brand recognition a lot of the time. Well, and because the players are really good. But like brand recognition a lot of the time, right?
Mhm.
Like if I remember, I don't know my R6 history that well, but if I remember correctly, there was like a time where like their R6 team was struggling a lot and they were sticking with them just because they had some of the biggest names in R6. And I know they've done that in league some too, to an extent, but eventually that does run out as well. Like they're not going to do it forever. So I think we're getting to that point. It's certainly possible that if like this next VCT cycle doesn't go well for GT or G2, that they say, all right, buddy, you can stay on as a streamer if you want, but otherwise.
Point of clarification on the R6 thing. The difference there is their team was literally the best in the world for a long time, and then they declined. And when that happens, it's like you get some patience. Like you won the world championship multiple times. Sure,
that's
fuck off for an event or two, and we'll see.
Well, but there are. To be fair, there are teams that would insta-cut those players as well.
And those teams would then not have the same success, would be my guess.
I do not disagree. I
think you win a couple world championships, you get some leeway that I don't
you get
think,
some leeway.
I don't think the Valor team has earned.
Just a touch, yeah.
Just a bit. Sam, how you feel? Do you think Maxwell's safe? Do you think he's starting to get hot seat?
I don't know. I think it's so tough to say. I think he's safe in the org for sure. But in terms of the team, I think I more or less agree with Paul. Like there's a very good chance that after a few months, maybe after this year, in fact, they're just like, maybe step aside, son. I don't know.
I'm just telling you, I guess. My hot take about this roster is Hoodie's gonna bang. Love Hoodie. Big Hoodie fan.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
love them Finn boys. Good old ex Havu Hoodie. Gonna pop off. That's my bet. All right, moving on here. What's next on our list? Rhyme to Gen G. Oh, here's another
more EU.
IGL being yoinked.
Yeah.
Another EU person coming on over, joining Gen G. We'll see if that's going to be the magic antidote to Gen G. They've really kind of faded of late. I don't know. Yep. We'll see how they do this cycle, I guess. Any hot takes here, Sam? You got anything?
I'm just kind of excited. I know that he's already in the States. I think I saw him tweeting, like, complaining about EU rank to the comparison between EU and NA, and he's clearly enjoying NA a little bit more in that regard. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. I mean, I've always rated him as a player, so it's really exciting to see him being given an opportunity. And again, I mean, I waxed lyrical about the whole IGL issue a moment ago. So yeah, I'm hoping to see a resurgence from Gen G, because they're also like, they'll have a bad run and then they'll make some sort of a change and then they'll like start rising and everyone's like, oh man, they're gonna do it, and then they just like fall down. So hopefully at this point they can actually make something happen. This is not my EU bias saying now that they have an EU player, they're going to do better. This is just me having faith, of course.
I'm hoping at least this gives like at least that sort of like new player honeymoon phase for Gen G, right? To where they can really start to push back toward the top of NA, because like there are good players on that team, right? Like I always think of Sean when I think of Gen G. Sean's nuts.
He's a monster.
Just an absolute legend. And for Gen G to have petered out over the like back half-ish of 2021 was a bit disappointing, especially like last chance qualifier, right? Like they lost every game except the one they had to LG, which LG was not really like, LG was kind of the gimme team in that tournament, as much as I like a lot of those guys comparatively. Gen G definitely needed something new, and I think bringing in Rhyme is great.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, they did make a lot of changes over the course of the last year, and especially in the back half of that last year. So it'll be curious to see. On the subject of sort of what we were talking about with Mixwell in the G2 team, also I will say Guimond is the only surviving member of OG Gen G of the French Canadians team. I'd imagine. I mean, I'd say he's still consistently performing from what I've seen of them, but you got to imagine at some point maybe his seat starts to heat up a little bit in kind of a similar fashion to what might happen with Mixwell. Moving on to the next thing, because there's still more things, and we're overtime. Jeez. As per usual. Mertz and Tensky. All right, let's just talk about this whole thing with Foxy, because it was very funny in a weird way. So he joined the team and was released 2 weeks later. The heck? Also, he was supposed to call for the team, so the heck happened there? So, anyone know?
Have you seen the tweet longer that Foxy wrote?
Yeah, where it was just like,
It was
good luck,
like,
blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
essentially. But he leaked the entire Heretics roster. Like, that was his freaking revenge, I guess. Like, he just leaks the whole roster. And then recently he tweets out a thing where he it started with Milan from Ascend, and he was like, based on scrimbucks and rumors and scrimming and whatever, this is what my power rankings for EMEA looks like for the year. What do you guys think? And then of course everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and Foxy did one. And he had all the same tiers, and there were like 2 empty tiers at the bottom, and then the last one said Alorante and friends, and then it had the Heretics. So like, clearly this was not in any amicable, agreeable, like there is some serious salt there. And I feel like the fact that he said Alorante and friends, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I feel like there's a dig there.
Oh, clearly.
So yeah, I see that George says, you know, more information on this to follow. So I'm gonna be keeping a keen eye on that one. What I will say is that Foxy has been known to have a little bit of an attitude, a bit of a David P, I suppose. Good player, but sometimes players struggle to get on with him. And this is something that I've known about him from like the old Apex days as well. Like, this is not new information. So I would not be surprised to hear that it boils down to something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a personality conflict, right? It's got to be. That has to have been it, where someone said, you know, it's me or him, and they chose him. Just kind of a weird situation. Obviously, not the place you want to be in if you're an organization right before the VCT tournament. You just we're like, yeah, this guy's gonna call. No, he's not. Never mind. We're gonna do something else. Moving on.
Yeah, losing your IGL is like kind of the worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
XL, fully new team. Patty Tech, Aussie, Element, Chihuahua. So four new pieces in here. This is a very new roster, full rebuild, basically. Yep. How are we feeling about XL?
I'm looking forward to Patatek and Chihuahua. They're both players that I've kind of followed a little bit. Aussie and Element, I struggle to place. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't been paying enough attention. But XL as an org have really struggled. Like so they signed David P and then everybody else. But David P was the first one. Like, they put out that whole big video, and we were still talking about how it looked like they were like promoting account buying or something. It was just the weirdest announcement video. And then they announced everybody else, and then they didn't do well, and then the team started to fall apart. And I actually don't know who their 5th player is offhand. Because they've just been so. Oh, okay, yeah.
Mo
I mean, they've just been so under the radar for so long. But like, Mo is a good player as well. So Mo, Patatek, and Chihuahua, at least I know that they'll do well. Aussie and Element, for me anyway, kind of remains to be seen.
Paul?
That's pretty much all I had. Sam's way more familiar with the EU scene than I am. The only player I even recognize out of these 4 is Patatek. So Patatek, obviously, really good. I've always liked seeing Patatek play. So Mo too. I remember Mo a little bit from watching Excel. But otherwise, I don't really have much input on this roster. Good luck, guys.
Well, so Element was part of that OG team, part of the Monkey Business team that became OG, and then was cut from that and just bounced around to a couple other things. I think he played with
that
Wave.
team just kind of went.
And Chihuahua played for NIP.
Yes.
So that's where they come from.
Oh.
Really? But yeah, no, those
Aussie was the question mark for me. I wasn't sure who Aussie was.
Aussie is magic of the internet. Tell me things. He's
I'm on it.
Played for No Poaching.
He played for G2.
G2 at one point.
Like in April last year?
It was probably just like a fill or something.
Yeah,
in VCG.
trial.
Maybe.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, missed that window. Shows what we know.
Go.
Sam, you're supposed to be our EU person, even though you're not in that continent.
I'm still in the region, I guess. We had this discussion previously. Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Yeah, it's stupid conglomeration of continents. But anyway,
Slacking, our one EMEA.
Moving on here. So that's the end of our roster news. Only an hour later. The NSG Winter Champs Open 12 happened. We already kind of talked about this a little bit. Luminosity's new roster win the thing. Renegades get to the semis. The X-Flick Baiters, which is Nerfed's roster, made it to the grand final, had a good grand final against that. Knights Academy does well. Knights does all right, drops to Luminosity. Big disappointments here, I guess, would be the fact that Basilisk are never going to do anything. I don't know what that That was always. You remember last year when the coach of Renegades left that team and was like, "I'm starting my new project," and chose to leave Renegades to go to this new project, and then they just haven't done anything. What's the deal with
My
you
big
do?
question mark.
Coach J, that's who it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
okay, sure.
that's not relevant. We don't need to go into Basilisk. All right,
Still
give me
coaching
your
that team?
takeaways from this.
So my big thing, and this is going to be a theme because we're going to talk about the other NSG in a bit. Well, I don't know if we go into it, but there was G11 prior to this.
Let's just
where
focus on 12. We don't have
Cloud9
time.
Yeah. No, it's about Cloud9. So
Okay.
they've competed in like 3 events,
Mhm.
and in all 3 of them, they've had okay results, not great, the academy team. And then they played in Knights, which was essentially a tournament made up of like pug teams because it was the end of the year, and it was like, hey guys, let's put a team together to play in a 5K. And they still didn't do too well. So I know it's still kind of early days for this team, but it's a little concerning, especially when they've got players like Poise. And you were talking about Urcast as well, Mike. You were like, "Oh, this kid, he's so great," and there was a little bit of expectation there. And then similarly, BGG, they had just won an NSG Open, and then they went into Knights, and then they just kind of bombed out. So there's a couple of teams. It feels like Tier 2 is becoming very volatile. I think that's my biggest takeaway right now.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, that Cloud9 Academy is going to be interesting. It'll, I suspect, take a little bit of time. I actually don't think it. I think Aircast is actually somewhat older than you might perhaps expect. But yes, he's been around for a minute. He was exciting back in CS. No idea what he's going to be able to do here in Valorant. Paul, any big takeaways from the Open 12?
Bro, my big takeaway is I'm jealous of the casters, dude. That's a bloody bracket. Look at that. Top 8 or top is that 8? Yeah. Like it's all 2-1s. Everybody's taking maps off each other. I hope we get this good action in VCT, man. Like that
100%.
is a blood, like just a bloodbath. Like that's wild, dude. And I mean, there's a lot. It's actually like pretty stacked for like the last few NSG Opens, right? Like generally there's like 3 teams that you kind of expect on top of everybody else. This has like closer to 5, maybe 6. Like it's just showing that everybody's gearing up for VCT, man. I'm excited. It's gonna be 2022 is gonna be a good year for Valorant.
Hell yeah.
It's gonna be pretty spicy. So we hit our. I didn't think we were gonna have enough time to fill, or we were going to need to fill some time here, because that's what I always think, and we never do. So I did have us put together some reflections on the year and some moving forward things. Obviously, we've run over our time, as we are so wont to do. So I'm just going to kind of go through mine quickly, and we can each just go through ours fairly quickly, I think. So I asked everybody to bring one thing looking back on this last year of Valorant that they really enjoyed and wanted to highlight, and then one thing looking forward to 2022 that they wanted to highlight as something to look forward to. So I'm going to say my looking back was just, I love the quality of the international competitions. Riot put on a hell of a show for their events, for their lands. Obviously, you didn't have an audience this time around, but the Masters were great. Champs was great. I think a lot of things went really well. We won't talk about Last Chance Qualifier in NA. Don't worry about that. That didn't happen. But Riot clearly know how to put on a show. They clearly know how to set up a stage. They clearly know a lot of these things. And I think that they're probably going to be even cooler in 2022. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully there's a crowd at some point, because that's always hype. And then my thing to look forward is the continued emergence of Valorant talent. And by that, I mean talent that aren't CS players, and they aren't Overwatch players, and they aren't somebody who had a career in another esport. They're cracked out people discovering their talent within Valorant. That doesn't mean they never played another game. Of course they played other games. That's being human. If you haven't played another game and your first game is Valorant that you ever touch and you're good, you're the Neo. You're the one. But anyway, I really like seeing, the emergence of talent who are making their name for themselves in Valorant to continue to come up through the ranks. And it does feel like we've done a pretty good job, or the scene has done a pretty good job of filtering those players up. And I'm looking forward to more of that going forward. So Sam, what are your things?
For me, looking back has been the growth of teams and players throughout the course of the year. I mean, since the game started, to be perfectly honest, like seeing how they have improved, how the metas have shifted and how the kind of rankings, the power rankings have changed. When you look at a team like Crew, the underdog story there was absolutely phenomenal. And I have just loved watching that from tournament to tournament and just seeing how they kind of push themselves, their passion to always be better, to always improve. It's actually inspiring to a very large degree. And for my looking forward, new agents, new maps, new dynamic ways to play the game. And of course, more EMEA spanking NA and more press for to Defuse.
I will ask one quick follow-up, which is when you're saying new agents, new maps, new dynamic ways to play the game, are you tempered on that at all, seeing our new Zoom agent Neon, or does that make you more excited?
It does make me a lot more excited because it kind of comes back to the whole thing I was talking about with the agent picks and bans, and I think that is going to shake things up in the most ridiculous way. And you know what, if a team's going to ban out Neon, then that's what's going to happen. I think that we're just moving into a space where dynamic is going to be the name of the game.
Sounds like a Pokemon. Dynamicism. All right, Paul, what are yours?
For me, my look back is I loved the time and dedication that the developers put into the game, right? Like, I don't think there's a single other esport out there that gets the same sort of love from the devs. And not everything's a hit. Not everything lands first time. We talked about NALCQ. There are mistakes, don't get me wrong, but like no other dev that I've seen in any esport across all of esports has been like so receptive to feedback and so quick to communicate with the community and quick to change things that they actually mess up and progress the game in a direction that at least the majority of the player base really enjoys. So I absolutely love the respect and love that the devs put into this game. It's going to make 2022 even better, right? And looking forward, Sam, we're kind of in the same boat here. I'm looking forward to the evolution of the gameplay, right? New agent. I was going to say, oh, Neon's around the corner. No idea when we're getting her. Well, I guess we know now. New map, theoretically, isn't too far out either, right? Like the new map once every 6 months.
I can't wait
Fracture
to see
came
what they
out
do
in
with that.
September, right? It's been 5 months since Fracture came out, so a new map is around the corner, probably coming out in like February, March, in theory. The game hasn't even been out 2 years. Valorant is already so goddamn great, and it's got such a it's got so much room to grow still. It's I've said it already 3 times, but I'm going to say it one more. It's just going to be a really great year.
All right, cue the meteor.
No.
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Wait, I'm knocking on wood.
This.
It's going to be a great year. I'm knocking on wood.
Yeah, there you go. That's
There
where
we
you
go.
got to do
Saved.
it. I do want to say one other thing that was my real big surprise of this last year. That was a really, really exciting thing, which is just how quickly international competition caught up to the top tier. I mean, from champions, we saw, teams from the minor regions, whatever you want to make of that, perform so much better than they had at any other point in international competition. And I didn't think it was going to happen that quickly. So that's really encouraging, especially for Brazil and LATAM. I think the growth has been tremendous. I think we've seen it rise up. This is a good year of Valorant, a very exciting year for Valorant. I think as the first full year of the VCT and Valorant esports, if you're Riot and this is your test case year, this was your, let's see how it goes year. Holy cow, it's very encouraging. I'm sure they're very pleased with the way things have gone, and I'm sure there's lots of plans to continue to build on it for 2022. That is going to wrap up our show for this week. We have one more thing to talk about before we go, which is that the NSG Winter Champs land is this weekend here in Philadelphia. Woo! I don't know if I'm going to make it out to it, but it is very exciting that it is happening here. So that's happening. Keep definitely watch that. Watch on this channel. Obviously, you'll be able to watch all the action here on Nerd Street, the twitch.tv/Nerd Street. I always want to give the old URLs, but they keep changing it up on me. But yes, be sure to watch that. The bracket should be out soon. Probably tomorrow would be my guess, but we'll see. We have
the teams.
Well, so
the teams,
here's the thing. It's
a
not
Crew.
It's
so
not the
excited.
teams, because the way the sign up website works is it mixes up individuals and also teams. So this is not a team list. A lot of these entries are just people. who are paying for either spectators or coaches or that kind of thing. So don't trust this sign up list, but there are some teams here that you can see. I'm sure we'll have a more complete team list tomorrow or thereabouts. So that'll be very exciting. But yeah, heck yeah. We're gonna watch some in-person Valorant. It's not LAN Valorant because you can't do that for stupid reasons. But it is in-person Valorant. So here's my thing I'm looking forward to, Riot. Two things. My wish list for 2022. Make a publicly available LAN client, or at least make it privately available to your third-party TOs. 2, make a damn demo viewer.
Yeah,
You want to progress your esport?
Yep.
Demo viewer.
Yep.
Your esport will skyrocket.
that.
The evolution will be enormous. Demo viewer. All right, those are my 2 wish list items for 2022. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. This is Press Forward to Defuse. We'll see you next week, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or whatever it is right now, Eastern Time. We'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in. Follow these fools on Twitter. Maybe follow me if you're feeling like it too. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.